Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn, and I'm here with New York Times bestseller Andrea Bartz to talk about her new thriller, The Last Ferry Out. Welcome to the show, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yeah, likewise, very much likewise. What a great, great book. I typically like to visualize where the story takes place, and I wasn't familiar with this Isla Colel, if I'm saying that correctly. So I looked it up on my Maps app, and it kept trying to send me to some place called Isla Colon,
Oh,
which sounds very dark and painful. But so I have to assume that Isla Colel is like a product of your imagination, or was my Maps app just failing me?
no, you're completely right. I call it Isla Colel, and it's entirely fictional because I didn't want to, have any real place be
Okay.
the site of some, shady things. But because it's fictional, I did have them create a map for for the book, which is in the finished
Oh, nice.
copy.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's kind of
Great.
fun if even though Google Maps couldn't do it for you,
Yeah.
the book itself can give you a little bit of the geography.
Great. Yeah, no, I have the advanced reader copy, so I did not get that map, else I would have probably saved myself a little bit of time there. But that's
A little
great. I'm glad
Googling.
you've got that in there.
Yeah,
Well, before we dive into the book, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your writing journey, just whatever you want to share.
sure. So, The Last Ferry Out is my fifth thriller. I have been publishing thrillers since 2019. Before that, I actually worked as a magazine editor, and I loved that job. I loved working on monthly magazines, and magazines kind of kept disappearing on me. Magazines maybe didn't love me back, the industry at least.
Yeah.
So I kept getting laid off and then finding a new job, and in one of those periods, decided to start working on something that was a me project that I couldn't just have sort of taken away from me. So I started writing a manuscript, and that eventually became The Lost Night, my debut. And since then, like I said, I've had four more books, and the journalism thing is sort of a dot in my history. And now writing books is what I'm very, very lucky to be doing full time because I absolutely love it.
And I think Reese Witherspoon might be a big fan of yours. Is that correct?
That is accurate. I was very, very fortunate with my third book. It's called We Were Never Here. And it's sort of a backpacking thriller about these two best friends who kill a backpacker in self-defense. But it's not the first time that they've taken a trip that's ended in bloodshed. That was sort of a departure for me. My earlier ones were murder mysteries, and this one, you know who done it. The question
Yeah.
is what's going to happen. And I found out that it was chosen for the Reese's Book Club pick back in 2021. And I just had an incredible experience then with getting my books introduced to so many new readers. And, since then I've met Reese herself, the book lover in chief.
Oh, nice.
And
Nice.
I was, yeah, very, very fortunate to have that happen because I think it means I can connect with so many more readers now.
Please tell me she's like as sweet as she seems.
Sweet as can be, so
Okay.
genuine. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I was one of, a ton of authors meeting her at the same time, a ton of Reese's Book Club authors. And yet I said, I'm Andy. I wrote We Were Never Here. And she goes, oh my gosh, I love We Were, she just, whether it's what it seems
Yeah.
very genuine that she
Yeah.
actually remembered it and was so friendly. So she's truly a golden heart right there.
Oh, that's great. Well, congratulations on that experience. That must have just been, you just must have been like on mile high at that
Thank
point.
you.
That's
It was really
great.
surreal because it was also 2021. So, like, we weren't out
Mm,
of, not that we're truly out of the pandemic now, but we were in another kind of stage of
yeah.
not group gatherings. And so I didn't have a tour, I didn't have a book launch, I didn't have any of those things,
Yeah.
but I was just home seeing that my book at one point was number one on all of Amazon. And it was just very, like, I was just sitting there in my little
Surreal.
apartment looking at this on a screen and going, can that be real? Is this actually
Yeah.
happening? It's
So surreal,
surreal.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm very happy. I hear
Thank
about
you.
that every once in a while where some of these, especially debut authors who came out in 2020 and they really missed out on the whole experience,
Yes.
because everything shut down. And I'm so happy when I hear uh, these types of good stories, where people, even with like TikTok and things like that, where
Yeah.
they're just they kind of come out of this oblivion and it's like, oh, thank you, I did
Yeah.
publish a book during the dark days, you
Truly,
know.
it's pretty wild to live in a time when there's all of these. It's a little scary, but also very
Yeah,
exciting that there's all these different ways for people to discover a book, for a book to suddenly
yeah,
take off. It used to be like it's in the bookstores or it's not, and the New York Times reviews it or it doesn't, and now it's just such a different ball game, and
yeah.
that's exciting in a lot of ways.
It sure is. It sure is. Uh, can you give us a quick overview of The Last Ferry Out? And do you recall what sparked the idea for this setting? And I'll call it a murder mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. So The Last Ferry Out, and I have my finished copy here that I'm holding up for the
Yeah,
video.
yes.
The
Yes.
Last Ferry Out is about a grieving woman who travels to this, remote, tiny, tropical, fictional island, Isla Colel, a few months after her partner died in a tragic accident there, hoping to find some closure. And she gets to see for herself this beautiful place, and she meets this really enchanting group of expats who knew her fiance. And at first, it seems like this really sort of healing environment for her. But then one of those expats sends her a text in the middle of the night that says, "You deserve to know the truth about what happened to Esther. Meet me at the cafe tomorrow, 9 a.m." So she rushes there, and he's nowhere to be found. And in fact, he's entirely disappeared from the island. So she begins to sort of go digging around into the past of what happened there, where these different expats actually came from, what are their secrets, what are their histories, what is the island kind of keeping from her. And it's got elements of a locked room mystery, like you said, a whodunit. And it's also hopefully very immersive and very much like puts you on this island. It has multiple narrators and timelines, so it's kind of this puzzle box mystery. It's twisty, it's queer. I hope it's a really, really fun read for people.
Yeah, it definitely was for me for sure. I love that
Yeah.
that island vibe that you built into the story and the expat community that you'd created in the book. And I was just curious and one of now it's not my favorite, but the one that really struck my little heart was the little sea turtle scene. So that was fun. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and you asked where the idea had come from, and I realized I didn't answer that part,
yeah.
but sea turtles do play a role in it, which is that in February 2020, before I had any idea that that was incredible timing, I spent a month traveling solo through Mexico. And
Okay.
because I was by myself, I was kind of meeting expats everywhere I went. I had this incredible month, and I found these people so friendly and welcoming, and they just invited me along to bonfires on the beach and cookouts and all of these things. And they invited me along for I got to do a sea turtle releasing and watch these just beautiful teeny tiny little creatures crawl
Yeah.
out to the ocean for the first time. And I just thought there was something so interesting about these expats because they were all so, like I said, friendly, and yet they were a little bit enigmatic, right? They all, by definition, had chosen to sort of parachute out of their own lives and leave behind their families and their friends and the lives that they were born into, and to be somewhere new where they didn't necessarily speak the language. And so it also kind of felt like what held these close-knit social milieu, these little, groups together was primarily that they could all speak English together. And I thought, would you guys even be friends if you were both in the US or you were both in Australia or that kind of thing?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
because of the way that my mind works and as a thriller writer, I thought, oh, interesting. Everyone's seeking something or running away from something. There's definitely secrets here. There's different pasts that we don't talk about. So why don't we take this motley crew, this social group, and we just throw a dead body in the center, which is sort of my MO for thrillers. So that was where the idea came from. And then the fictional island was kind of an amalgamation of that trip through Mexico that was all over the West Coast. I traveled to Isla Obosh for a friend's birthday, and that was where I had some of the ideas for well, the location. We put it near Cancun and took a ferry out. And yeah, they have issues there with over tourism and sort of that, like the locals versus tourists,
Yeah.
sort of tension, as well as things like a nature preserve and amazing wildlife. And then lastly, the idea for there's creepy ruins in this book that, become an important part of the setting. And my partner and I, the last few years, have spent a few weeks in winter in Puerto Rico on the West
Nice.
Coast in Rincon. And about an hour south of there, there's this amazing hiking and mountain biking area that's built around the ruins of what was actually like I don't know if it was quite a juvenile detention center, but definitely like a boarding school in the jungle for boys with behavioral problems. And there was just the most fascinating rows of old kind of barracks. And you could see the yeah, the front desk and the church and all these different
Oh,
elements that like the
interesting.
jungle was sort of
Yeah.
retaking. And
Yeah.
that really made an impact and really made my thriller writer spider senses tingle. So that became a part of the book as well.
All right. Yeah, I was kind of curious if you had experienced that vibe, that expat vibe and the island experience and all of that. That's so no, that's great. That it's really cool when authors can go and travel to a destination. Either that is what is in the book, or they can kind of devise something on their own out of it. It feels like you can get a lot of these little nuances in there that maybe you couldn't have been able to put in there had you not been in that environment. So that's always kind of neat.
Yeah, thank you.
So the thriller and the mystery authors, they have to come up with these ingenious ways to rid their characters of their phones. And you came up with a fun way to do that with your protagonist. Just between you and me, is this the most complicated plot twist that you have to devise in each book?
Honestly, I think in most of my books they do keep their phones, and so the actual difficulty is creating clues and reveals that wouldn't just be found with 1 minute of Googling, which would be very easy. And actually, in fact, the main character loses her phone pretty quickly in this book in a way that hopefully doesn't feel too convenient. But she has the internet and she does quite a bit of searching and trying to figure things out with, the aid of the internet. So I think it's a cop out to do it with every book, to set every book in the 90s so that nobody has cell phones, to make people just cut off in that other way. I included that as an element, but I don't think it's too convenient or too
No.
helpful to her because she does pretty quickly obtain a phone that she can use on the island anyway.
Yeah. No,
So
I was just trying to be silly there a little bit, but it does feel like that phones complicate mystery and thriller authors' lives so much.
absolutely, absolutely. I think that's why we're seeing so many sort of, historical fiction books that are just
Yeah.
set a couple decades ago, because then we don't have to deal with it. But
Right,
yeah,
right.
the worst review you can get on Goodreads is, if they would have just Googled this, it would have been over. This
Yeah.
book would have been over on page 5. So you need to come up with some interesting reveals that can come through in other ways.
For sure, for sure. All right. Well, can you tell us about a recent book that you've read and loved and maybe why?
Sure. I recently finished a book called Coram House by Bailey Seabolt. And it's a debut by an author who's based in Vermont. And it is sort of a literary mystery. It's not super high octane, but it's beautifully written and very immersive. And it's about this orphanage that back in the 50s and 60s was run by nuns and had orphans there who later went on to report a lot of abuses that they suffered there.
Mm.
So this main character travels to this place to ghostwrite a nonfiction book about everything that happened at this orphanage. And while she's there, another murder occurs, that potential murder that seems to be related to what happened, 50 plus years ago. I just was really impressed with like I said, the prose, the writing was so beautiful. The plotting was very sort of methodical, and I love a slow burn personally. I know that's not for everyone, but it's this really kind of slow burn, immersive book. And yeah, if you're somebody who likes kind of a literary mystery in the vein of Tana French or Leanne Moriarty, I would definitely recommend it. I thought it was beautiful.
All right, great. Thank you for that. That sounds amazing. Is there a story that you would love to write, but you just haven't taken the plunge for whatever reason yet? Or maybe you have recently written one of those books, and if you could talk about that too.
That's a great question. I just started working on my next book, which is a slightly different genre. This one has thriller elements, but is a little bit more horror, and it's kind of a twist on the haunted house tale.
Ah,
And now
yeah.
that I've started it, I am just realizing how incredibly fun it is to, write what to me in my head feels like a horror movie. I am the biggest fan of horror movies,
Yeah, they're
and
fun, aren't
so
they?
writing it is giving me this experience of like, why didn't I do this long ago? I love doing this. I am someone who I get bored really easily. I love switching things up. And so I have ideas that I have brought to my agent about speculative fiction stuff that I want to write and like different genres. And I'm kind of in a spot in my career where it's like, okay, like we don't want to maybe totally pull a fast one on all your readers. Like we're still building, we're still finding readers. So what's sort of the path to being able to do all these different things.
Yeah.
So I have been I have been having fun stretching my wings a little bit into the horror genre.
Do you remember when you finished the last ferry out? Do you remember what you did to celebrate finishing the book? How did you treat yourself?
How did I treat myself? I feel like there's something about this being book number 5 that like it got a little bit less exciting and a little bit more like, okay, tomorrow the revisions begin. Tomorrow we go back
Yeah.
to page 1. I think a big part of that is because I am a pantser, not a plotter. I write without an outline. So by the time I have gotten to the end of the draft, I have figured out so many things that I need to go back and change in the
Mm.
first generally like half, 2/3 in order to make the story cohesive. So it almost doesn't feel like hitting the end because, yeah, but this isn't a real draft yet because I need to go back and like make all these things
Right.
match.
Yeah.
But what I probably did was tell my partner Julia and have her either make me a drink or we went out and got a drink to celebrate.
There you go.
I have started typing the end. I didn't used to do that. Now I type the end at the end, and that makes it feel very real.
Yes, yes. I used to type the end when I would finish the first ugly draft, right? But now I've started typing the end once it's ready to be sent off to the editor,
Oh,
because it's like
interesting.
when I would type it before, it's like, oh, I'm done. But I'm like, no, you're not
You're
even
not actually
close.
done. Get it
So
exactly.
I had to quit doing that because I would get kind of depressed about it a little
Yeah.
bit because I had so much more work to do. So, no, that's great. I'm glad to hear that you did a little something to celebrate because it's always nice, even after, 5 books, that you take that time to say, oh my gosh, I just finished this book and it's amazing and I'm proud of myself. And yeah, going
Thank you. I
from
mean,
there.
it definitely wasn't amazing yet at that point. I knew that, but it is important to take those moments to, look around and feel excited about reaching a certain mountaintop. And I'm always telling other people that. So this is a good reminder. I need to do it for myself too.
All right, great. Well, Andrea, before we go, can you tell us what's up next for you? You said you're working on number 6. Is there any other if can you talk about that, or do you have any other fun projects that maybe you want to talk about?
I always have my finger in so many pies. So I, yes, began working on book 6, which is going to come out in 2027. And I think when it's a little further along, I'll be excited to share some details about what's kind of fresh and fun about this plot to me. But I also am trying to break into writing for the screen, which is a totally different and new skill. I did write a script for an adaptation for one of my books. I guess I'm not supposed to share details of which one
Okay.
and for whom yet,
Okay. All
but
right.
that exists. I also wrote a screenplay with the help of a sort of the oversight of a producer for a short story that I had written and published. which went much more smoothly. Hot tip for anyone who wants to write a screenplay, do it from a short story and not an entire book. Way easier, way less culling that you have to do.
Yeah, I bet.
So yeah, and I'm kind of advocating now to hopefully learn how to write TV treatments and pilot scripts and learn about writing for TV too. So those are sort of the big projects that are future looking. I also, in 2024, launched a newsletter on Substack. It's called Get It Right, WRITE.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's all about craft and the publishing industry and sort of the unfiltered look at author life. And as a former magazine editor, it's been really fun for me to just have
Yeah.
this outlet where I can write whatever I want to write and be really real with people. And I think it's resonating because this industry has so much. I mean, this industry has so much of the I'm so thrilled, I'm so excited, my life seems great. On Instagram, we're always just sharing the highs. And I also try to share the lows and talk about the tough stuff about being a professional author as well. So I think that
Yeah.
has resonated with people who are both already authors and who are aspiring authors pre-publication.
It
So I
must be
think
resonating with folks because I always get Thriller Fest's the audio recordings and I listen to them throughout the year, and I just finished one of them about like the social media and that sort of thing, and one of the panelists on there talked about
really,
your yeah, they talked about your Substack, and I can't remember what the topic was now. Now I'll have to look it up and send it to you. And they talked about getting, reading your Substack, not just for that article, but just in general because you do such a great job with your Substack. And so I went out there and looked at it, and I'm like,
oh,
oh my gosh, there's a lot here. Yeah, it's
thank you so
great.
much. Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. And I also, want it to be such a valuable resource for people. And so I, for example, did a project that I'm calling the Query Successful Query Compendium, where I pulled together dozens and dozens and dozens of successful query letters from authors from all genres, New York Times bestsellers, so that people can just read and sort of emulate them if
Yeah.
you're querying yourself, figure out how to pitch your own book. And I'm about to kick off another project that, in a similar way, I think will be a really great resource for authors. So watch this space because I'll have more on
Yeah.
that soon. But yeah,
All
I
right,
just think
great.
it's such, the industry is so full of kind-hearted, interested people who want to support one another through the good times and the bads. And I've just found such an amazing community through this Substack. So it's really great to hear that. Yeah, it was brought to your attention too.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let you get back to your journalism roots for sure.
Exactly.
Folks, when this episode airs, The Last Ferry Out will be out. So be sure to order your copy today. You can check out Andrea's website at andreabartz.com. What social media outlet are you most active on, Andrea?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram probably. So my username there, as well as on Substack and Threads, etc., is Andy Bartz, ANDI BARTZ. And yeah, I would love to meet people there and love to connect with other writers and readers.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a ton, Andrea. It was so wonderful having you on to chat. I can't wait for readers to get their hands on The Last Ferry Out. And yeah, it was a real pleasure.
Truly, the pleasure was mine. Thank you so much, Tracy. This was really fun.
You bet. Many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll be back soon with another great read. Take care, everyone.